goal! Brought down and taken on the turn, and it's a goal. Gordon Wallace has scored for Dundee.
O'Donnell doesn't get it. Chance with Ferguson and goal. Beautifully taken by Ferguson.
Wright has done very, very well. There's a lovely cutback. Surely he must put it away. He has. Coyne. That's a magnificent goal by Hugh Robertson.
Dens Park, the 6th of May 2000. Dundee Football Club are taking on arch-rivals Dundee United in yet another keenly awaited derby encounter. The modern settings of the ground celebrate the club's history, which stretches back to 1893. Inside the stadium, pre-match hospitality is in full swing, while fans across the city also relish another classic game. A large body of support reflects a unique and distinguished history and tradition, one which has seen the club win a league championship, the Scottish Cup, 3 League Cups, and become one of the first British teams to appear in a European Cup semi-final. Today's team is no less committed than their forebears, but this afternoon's game has its own special tensions.
Right, come on.
Through good times and bad, the team and supporters have survived 2 world wars, economic crises and fluctuating fortunes. From this dressing room, legends such as Alan Gilzean, Doug Cowie, Billy Steele and Jockey Scott have written their own place in the club's record books. Over the past century, Dens Park has seen both joy and despair in equal measure. With football gaining in worldwide popularity, they enter the new millennium with renewed strength and optimism. This is their story. The story of the Dark Blues starts when 2 clubs in Dundee, Our Boys and East End, amalgamated in 1893 to form Dundee Football Club and join the recently formed Scottish League. The first official fixture was against Glasgow Rangers at West Craigie Park on the 12th of August that year, in front of 5,000 enthusiastic fans, a game which resulted in a 3-3 draw. Within a few months, the fledgling club had moved to a better equipped ground in the docks at Carolina Port, a home they were to occupy for the best part of 5 years. One of their earliest stars was centre-half and captain William Plum Longear, who also played for Scotland and was to become the club's trainer for over 20 years. Despite some ambitious signings, the sight of the ground meant that large crowds only turned out for the bigger games. And as the club's financial situation worsened, so did their position in the Scottish League. At the bottom, and after a players' strike, the club went into liquidation, but was reborn under fresh ownership and then moved to a new ground. At Dens Park on the northern outskirts of the city, the first game was played in August 1899. And with William Wallace appointed as the team's first manager, this was to prove the beginning of better times for Dundee. As the new century got underway, a series of First Division runners-up places in 1903, 1907 and 1909 paved the way for the club's first major success. Their 1910 Scottish Cup final victory against West of Scotland side Clyde went the distance in more ways than one. It took 3 visits to Ibrox Stadium before the deadly finishing of John Sailor Hunter sealed a 2-1 result, which ensured the first major trophy for Dens and a night of celebration for the Jute City. As well as Hunter, other prominent players of the day included Scottish international forwards Jack Fraser and Sandy McFarlane, and English centre-half Herbert Dainty. But as often happens after major success, the great cup-winning side gradually broke up as the Great War loomed, and it was only after its conclusion that the Dark Blues were to regain anything like their old form. In 1919, former Dundee and Scotland forward Sandy McFarlane became manager. For 3 years they maintained 4th position in the league. Average attendance rose to 15,000 and major improvements were made to Dens Park, with the construction of the £60,000 uniquely shaped North Stand in 1921. The team in the early 20s boasted a number of internationalists, and characters such as left-back David Napper Thompson, a full-back whose style was ahead of its time, and touchline terror outside left Alec Troop, who in 1923 was sold to Everton for £4,000, a substantial sum in those days. The strength of the side was demonstrated when they reached their second Scottish Cup final in 1925, only to suffer a 2-1 defeat at the hands of Celtic at Hampden Park, despite the efforts of centre-forward Davy Halliday, to this day Dundee's league goal-scoring record holder with 38 in one season. Soon the 20s gave way to the 30s, and although George Hill was not to join the club until later, he clearly remembers earlier years.
I supported Dundee during the 30s, before I ever thought about ever thinking I would play for them. And I would see quite a lot of names of that time playing at football. Bill Marsh and Alec Troop I saw in 1930. He had just come back from Everton. And the week before, a Harry Ritchie from Hibs had signed for Dundee. So that was playing against Hearts in the Scottish Cup in 1930. I remember that fine. I think Dundee got beat though.
By the 30s, the debts incurred in the building of the new stand a decade earlier meant that many star players were sold south of the border. Dundee consistently managed to replace these stars with homegrown talent such as Jock Gilmore, Jimmy Robertson and Colin McNabb, who all went on to play for Scotland. But the constant drain of talent produced the inevitable consequences, and Dundee were relegated to Division 2 in 1937-38.
Well, 1939 Jerry signed, Jerry Fallon, and I signed in February 40, both signed by Andy Cunningham. And I think we would be the last players, I'm talking about juniors, you know, that was signed before Dundee stopped playing, which they did in May of 1940. And Andy Cunningham was the manager for that period when I was, and Jerry was at Dens. But he was different in a way from George Anderson. He was a manager, a paid employee, whereas George Anderson was a managing director, which was a different kettle of fish. In other words, George Anderson probably had more scope than what Andy Cunningham had. But both of them were good men, I thought, yeah.
With the onset of the Second World War, the Scottish League was abandoned, and with dwindling crowds and increasing numbers of players being called up, Dundee decided to go into abeyance rather than continue in a regional league. In 1944, the club restarted and bounced back under director-manager George Anderson.
45-46, they had formed the B League, and we won it. No bother. I mean, well ahead of the... Airdrie were the best, were the main opponents at that time, but we were well above them, and we won the league 45-46. We didn't get promotion because the authorities said that football wasn't back to normal. So we had to win it 46-47. We won it in 45-46, 46-47, and then we were into the A Division in 1947. But we had to win the B League twice before we got there. And we did.
Alongside George Hill was a young Doug Cowie, one of a fresh intake of players who arrived at Dens under the stewardship of Anderson, and over a 16-year period was to make a record number of appearances for Dundee.
I would put Doug in the upper bracket of footballers in Scotland of his time. He was a right half when he came, and then George Anderson put him to centre half, and it was Gallagher, Cowie, Boyd, half-back line. It was, well, you could say there wasn't a better one in Scotland. And Doug himself eventually went left half and just played just as well. Alfie could go at centre half sometimes, and Doug went left half. But Doug, without a doubt, was one of the great players of the post-war period.
George Anderson looked after me like the son he never had. He was just a larger-than-life person, you know, with the bow tie and the bowler hat, and everything he did was big. And I think he realised, and the players realised, that they give as much back as he was giving them, you know. And I think that's the way he was successful. I may be biased a wee bit because he saw me playing and he signed me personally And every break in the game he gave me, I'm very lucky. He maybe saw something in me that I didn't see.
In the 1947-48 season, Dundee managed to finish fourth. But there was agony on the final day of the following year when this saved penalty meant that the Dens men failed by 1 point to be champions. After the disappointment, Anderson rebuilt the team. The highlight being the signing of inside left Billy Steele from Derby County in 1950 for a Scottish record fee of £23,500. An established Scottish international and one of the biggest names in British football, he was soon to be joined in a forward partnership by Bobby Flavel. And in October 1951, Dundee were set for glory.
I think maybe George Anderson was thinking, we're a team that's just going to miss out on things, you know. We're a nice football team, but we're just going to miss out. And I think he was looking ahead to get that, the vital spark that was going to make us win things. And he came up with like a Billy Steele. Billy Steele was everything you'd look for in a football player. He was great at a few things. He was a great narc for a start. Fortunately, the next day he forgot about it. That was the beauty of him. He was a great storyteller, Billy Steele, always giving jokes or telling stories. And he was a great player. Fortunately, I played behind him and not against him.
Billy was taking a corner kick, and Bobby Flavel and I were all up for the corner, and Bobby Flavel was in front of me, and Billy nodded his head for Flavel to come over to him, and Flavel went over and had a wee chat with him at the corner flag, and he came running back with a smile on his face, and I always remember the referee saying to him, "What's he wanting?" "Oh," he says, "it's all right, ref. He's asking me, do I want the lace on the right side or the left side?" That was the sort of things that went on in these days. I suppose nowadays you get a yellow card for it or something.
At the semi-finals, I think we went to Ibrox and beat Motherwell 5-1. That's when Steele and Flavel went to town and Bobby Flavel scored a hat-trick. And then we went, of course, to play Rangers. I remember we were down 1-0 half-time, and then we equalised. Then we went in front, and there was about 2 or 3 minutes to go. And George Young took a long kick into the area, into the 6-yard box. I left the ball, playing centre-half, I left the ball to the goalkeeper. Bill Brown came out with Thornton, and they clashed a wee bit, and the ball went down without them, anybody touching it. We got a free kick, and Alfie boys lined up to take the free kick just inside their half. Billy Steele runs back, and he says, "You go in, Alf, I'll take the free kick," which was perfect because Billy Steele put it right onto Alfie's head, and we were in front. So the next chapter, I'm thinking, is now over my dead body. They're not going to score in the last couple of minutes. So it was a great feeling. And then when we came back here, of course, there must have been 15,000, 20,000 people. And you felt so pleased for them that they'd seen Dundee winning a bit of silver here. You felt more pleased for them than you did for yourself, really.
A cup double looked in prospect when Dundee made good progress in the Scottish Cup, meeting Third Lanark in the semi.
At Easter Road, Dundee in dark shorts beat Third Lanark by 2-0 to pass into the final. Christie sent over a beauty, and Burrell made no mistake to put Dundee 1-up. After some general play, Dundee went further ahead when Billy Steele got a chance and made it 2-0.
Well, in 1952, we got to the final of the Scottish Cup, and that was the time when we played in front of 130-odd thousand people. 134 or 137, I'm not sure. And obviously that's a very excitable time, going out and seeing this crowd, because while Dens Park was normally well attended It wasn't in this category. So it was a wee bit nerve-wracking, I'll put it mildly. But you've just got to get over these things, and we didn't get over it altogether, so we got beat 4-0. But nevertheless, we were, in a sense, a wee bit unlucky in the first half.
Centre forward Flavel shoots, but Kilmarnock kicks off the line to save a certain goal. That's the first of 3 saves by Willie. Here comes another. Plenty of thrills, but no score is the report at half-time.
All credit to Motherwell. They deserved to win in the end. But it's always something that you've played in a cup final in front of 130,000 people. It doesn't happen every week, we'll put it that way.
That October, the Dark Blues returned to Hampden for the 3rd time in a year, retaining the League Cup after defeating Kilmarnock 2-0.
We didn't play so well that day. We never played so well that day, but fortunately, we had a good defence and we held out. And then a couple of long balls down the middle, and Bobby Flavel put 2 in the net, and we won 2-0. But we were a wee bit fortunate that day. But still, to retain the trophy at that time for a provincial team like Dundee took a bit of doing.
In 1953, a second-round Scottish Cup tie against Rangers attracted a Dens Park record crowd of over 43,000.
Dundee were determined to break the Rangers' recent impressive run of victories, but although they started many attacks, they just couldn't make it. In the second half, Dundee was on the attack again, but they still couldn't pierce the Rangers' defence. Then Rangers counter-attacked, and that spelled disaster for the home team. Hubbard put in a low drive to open the scoring, and before Dundee had time to realise what had happened, Rangers had done it again through Grierson. Rangers thus pass into the 3rd round. Hard luck, Dundee.
After their cup successes, Dundee were very much a team in demand, and their close season tour that year was to the exotic destination of South Africa.
It wasn't supposed to be Dundee. Initially, it was the SFA that were going. But George Anderson, clever man, I think it was a question of we would fulfil their obligations. And that's how Dundee got to South Africa. We played 17 matches, won 15, lost 1 and drew 1. And that included 3, they call football matches, test matches, just as they do cricket. So we got beaten 1 of the test matches at Durban, but we won the other 2, 1 at Johannesburg and 1 in Cape Town. So, and we scored 70 goals and 12 against. Not bad.
Following a memorable and successful South African safari, the great team broke up, and the mid-50s was a major transitional period for the Dark Blues. Scottish international left half Doug Cowie was to become a key figure.
The team was changing at that time. We'd lost a lot of good players, you know. In '54, I think we lost we'd lost Cowan, Frew, Ziesing, Flavel, Steele. That's a nucleus of a great side, really. We lost all them. We were renewing the team. Fortunately, I was maybe still left to help the players that were maybe coming in, you know. So there was a few good players coming there at Thornton had got from the scouts, you know, like Gilzine, Cousin, Bobby Cox. I think you got Hamilton as well. Andy Penman, I thought was a great player. And I was lucky enough to play with these players. Fortunately, Bobby and Cousins and them, they came in and they played right away, you know, to being seasoned too long in the reserves. They came in and played right away, and of course, the more games they played, the more they gelled together and a good side. It turned into a really good side.
Bob Shankley became manager in 1959 and inherited this rich vein of young players. Bobby Cox was skipper of that Dundee side, who remembers the Shankley years with great pride.
Bob Shankley was a hard taskmaster. He wanted things right, and as far as the coaching and that he left it to Sammy. Sammy did all the coaching. Bob came up, stood and took part and watched what was going on, things like that. But Bob Shankley was a wonderful person. Great manager. Anything that Bob Shankley told us to do or to work out or something like that, it seemed to be in agreement with the player. The player was in agreement with everything that Bob Shankley did.
Bob sort of came in with a new broom, swept out a lot of people who had been here for years and really weren't going anywhere. Gave youth a chance, and I think it was the advent of Bob Shankley that made the transformation. He was the man behind it all. He was just a terrific manager. He just got the best out of everybody, and I think that's what managers are all about. They get the very best out of players.
Everyone was afraid of him, but it was a fear born out of respect, and he could put you down with a sentence. You know, if you were big-headed or shouting the odds, he would say, "Listen, son, if you're ever at Wembley, you'll be wearing a tammy. You'll not be in the pitch." And managers are supposed to be positive in their support. You know, the psychologists say positive affirmation. He used to say to me, put his hand on my shoulder and say, "Nothing clever from you today, son." And when he was doing the team group photograph, you knew how well you were placed. If you were Ian Muir or Bobby Cox or Alec Hamilton, Alan Gilzean, Gordon Smith, you were in the middle of the photo. The less good players were put at the sides, and he would say to me and maybe my pal Doug Houston, he'd say, "Houston, you sit at that end. Brown, you sit at that end. A pair of scissors will get rid of you two." So you knew by your positioning in the photograph what he thought of you. And there's a significant one with Ian Muir because Ian wouldn't re-sign one year, and Ian was banned from the photograph. Very strict. No player was bigger than the club, and Shankly ruled that club. I would have thought majestically. He was a magnificent football manager.
Bob Shankly's sound judgment was to mould a team that went on to take the league title and reach the European Cup semi-final and Scottish Cup final.
No, I think the strength of the Dundee team was consistency of selection and the talent identification qualities of Bob Shankley. He picked players. He didn't go out and sign expensive players, but he picked players for the job. And his most significant signing, I think, was to bring back Gordon Smith, who had already won 2 championships with Hibernian and with Hearts. And at age 35, I think, he brought Gordon Smith. Now, everyone respected the Gay Gordon, a wonderful winger. And his crosses to the head of Alan Gilzean were instrumental in many goals for Dundee. But they had an excellent spine in the team, right through the middle of the team. They had Ian Muir in the heart of the defence. Always solid goalkeeping. Pat Linney when they won it, Bert Slater the next year. But then we had Bobby Seath in midfield. Excellent, controlling the game there on the right side of midfield. And up front, Gilzean and Cousin. And of course 2 wingers in those days. Outside right, Gordon Smith, outside left, Hugh Robertson. And the team was very, very well balanced. Tough, quick fullbacks, Alec Hamilton, Bobby Cox, and Bobby Wishart, a brain in midfield, excellent passer of the ball. And of course the old inside forwards that they had, Alan Cousin could get forward from there, and Andy Penman, magnificent passer of the ball. So the whole team was beautifully balanced, excellent athletes as well as footballers, and they were, believe me, dedicated. They trained really, really hard, but I've got to say also they played hard. They enjoyed themselves. And it wasn't, I would say, a teetotal team by any stretch of the imagination. But prior to matches and in preparation for matches, they were extremely conscientious.
The 1961-62 league campaign got off to a great start. 9 wins from the first 10 games, putting Dundee 3 points clear at the top. Now they faced a major hurdle when they journeyed to Ibrox.
At half-time, I think it was nothing each. And then in the second half, the fog got progressively worse. I mean, really, I don't think the game should have been played because I don't think people at one end of the park saw the goals at the other end. I could barely see it. I could just see us attacking into the mist and players coming back, throwing their arms in the air. So I said, "Oh, we've scored again." And so it went on. And we only won 5-1. And that was a great day, and that was a big turnaround in the league.
By late January, the team lay 8 points above Rangers, after being unbeaten for 18 league games.
But again, we went and we blew it again in the early months of that following year. You know, the January, February period. I don't think we won a game out of it, 6 games.
And I think the slump coincided perhaps with an injury to Bobby Wishart. And Bobby Wishart came out the team, and I came in. And unfortunately, You know, when I got a few games in the middle of the season, we drew at Kilmarnock, then we got a thumping. Partick Thistle beat us 3-0, which was a disaster in the campaign.
Rangers overtook us, I think, but it went 3 points ahead, I think, at one point. And everyone said, oh, it's all over again, Dundee have blown it, the wee team's blown it. We then beat St Mirren.
Now, St Mirren were a good side at the time, and we managed to beat St Mirren in the penultimate game.
They were 1-0 up, and St Mirren were awarded the penalty. About 15 minutes to go, and there was a great hoo-ha about it. And the referee, who was Willie Syme, David Syme's father, went and consulted the linesman. And I travelled down in the car with him after the game. He said, what do you consult the linesman for? Well, it was a clear penalty. And he said they consulted them because Gordon Smith protested, and I've never known Gordon Smith to protest about a decision in his life. It was a very happy ending. The penalty was missed, and Dee ran straight down, and Andy Penman scored a blinder just as the news came through from Pretoria that Rangers were 1-0 down. And that was pretty well it.
From 3 points down, we were back in with a shout, you know, and we took it from there.
And of course the final match was St Johnstone at Perth.
St Johnstone needed a draw to stay up, to stay in the Champions, and we didn't know whether the Rangers game, what was going to go on at Aberdeen with the Rangers Aberdeen, so it was a must that we got the 2 points there.
On that blazing hot day in April, the Dark Blues needed only a point from their game with relegation-threatened St Johnstone. After 24 minutes, Gordon Smith crossed to Alan Gilzine, who headed home to send the travelling support into a frenzy of anticipation.
It's the Bull Boys who wear the dark blue Dundee.
Sensing that the title was now within their grasp, Dundee settled into their stride. Alan Gilzine added to his tally 59 minutes into the game, after running on to a long ball from Alex Hamilton. It was his 27th goal of the season.
Oh, there's Robertson, Penman and Alan Gilzine, with Hassan and Smith, they're the finest you've seen. A defence that is steady, heroic and sure. Lenny Hamilton, Coxheath and Wishart and Ure.
To crown the triumph, 8 minutes later, Andy Penman crashed home a shot off the crossbar to put the team into an unassailable lead. And with Rangers only drawing their game with Kilmarnock, Dundee had marched into history, winning the championship by a clear 3-point margin.
The Dark Blue Dundee.
I'll never forget it. That was just I think it still remains the greatest day I ever had in football. The feeling was just euphoric. It was absolutely unbelievable. It was the most wonderful day. I was gloriously drunk at night. It was just a fantastic event. I remember winning at Wembley in 1962. Was a famous day when we beat England with 10 men. That was a wonderful feeling. But I don't think anything compares with that day at Muirton. You know, the night we had, just the sheer joy of it all. It was wonderful.
With the domestic title in the bag, the Dark Blues qualified for the following year's European Cup and once again hit the heights with a string of impressive performances against top continental opposition. FC Cologne were to be the first victims.
The Dundee Championship side was certainly good enough to win the European Cup the following year, and probably should have won the European Cup the following year.
Real Madrid, they were the favourites, and they got put out in the first round. And Cologne went to favourites. They were the favourites for the time, for them to win it. And they came up here and we thrashed them up here.
And Penman. Got Cousin and Gilzine in the middle. And a goal! This could be number 2. And it is! Robertson, a third! Only 12 minutes gone. This is the most sensational bout of scoring I've ever seen in the European Cup. Gilzine, 7.
after that, we believed in ourselves that we can have a run in this championship.
And of course, when we went back to Germany, they had to do something, so immediately they picked out the goalkeeper for attention, and Bert Slater was kicked in the head. So that meant that Andy Penman, an outfield player, had to go into goal, no substitutes, and Dundee played there with 10 men.
But for Bert coming back on at half-time and concussed, totally concussed, he doesn't remember playing in the second half. We'd probably with a good chance of losing the tie. But we held out and we ended up winning, I think, 8-5 in aggregate overall. So it was a great comeback. But I think we were every bit as good. Well, we were better than the Germans over the two games. We were a better team. And once we'd beaten them, I don't think any team held any fears for us.
Following the victory over Cologne, in the next round, Dundee faced the Portuguese champions, Sporting Lisbon.
We went away, I think, the first game there, and we were beaten 1-0 in their ground. And then we hammered them 4-1 here and gave them a right sorting here. It could have been a lot more than 4-1.
Quarter-final opponents Anderlecht, earlier conquerors of the mighty Real Madrid, were swept aside both home and away.
To beat Anderlecht away from home 4-1, with famous players like Paul van Heemst in the Anderlecht team, and Gozin to head the goals, I think 3 over there, away from home.
You know, at one point I think there was about 50 passes. We held possession football, and I remember the crowd just started clapping involuntarily, and it was quite a moment. A Scottish team in Europe teaching them how to play possession football.
And the legs don't like it, it's going to be 4. It is.
Italian giants AC Milan were now the final barrier in Dundee's path to the European Cup final. But although the Dark Blues were content with a 1-1 half-time scoreline, a second period loss of concentration resulted in a 5-1 defeat. In the second leg, Dundee made a valiant effort to overcome the deficit. But despite winning 1-0 before a 38,000 crowd at Dens, it was not enough.
I think the reason we did so well is because we could play football from the back all the way out. Everybody can play the football from defence right through the forward lines.
We played possession football, the Dundee team. We had lots of good players, all wanting to retain possession. We didn't give it away easily.
I don't think anyone could doubt the quality of that Dundee team.
We came within an ace of winning the European Cup that year. I've got absolutely convinced of that.
Bob Crampsey, who's a statistician and a very, very shrewd historian in Scottish football, I think I've heard him say, I hope I'm not misquoting him, that he felt that was the best ever club side in Scotland, even better than the Celtic team, which 4 years later won the European Cup. Now, with a little break, I think Dundee could have won it 4 years before Celtic.
The great thing they had was that they were an exquisite footballing side. They were by far, Dundee were by far the best pure footballing side that we produced and so on, without any question at all.
Ian Ure had been one of Dundee's key defenders, but early next season the Scottish international was transferred to Arsenal for £62,500. Fellow Scottish internationalist Alec Hamilton remained as a key figure at Dens and would go on to become Dundee's most capped player. Despite the loss of Ure, plenty of talent still remained, and some spectacular scoring saw them reach the semi-final of the 1964 Scottish Cup. Their opponents were Kilmarnock.
Dundee take the field at Ibrox Stadium in the semi-final of the Scottish Cup. After 31 minutes, Dundee inside left Gilzine opens the score. At half-time, it's Dundee 1, Kilmarnock 0. Dundee go on pressing till the very end, and before the final whistle, they win the semi-final 4-0.
Dundee had a number of potential goal scorers, but none could compare with the prolific Alan Gilzine. The big inside left was to smash Dundee's individual scoring record with 52 league and cup goals for the season. And he finished his Dens career with an astonishing 163 goals from 181 games. With 72 goals from their previous 19 games, the Dark Blues were confident of success in the final against Rangers.
Dundee in white attacking the goal on the left, Rangers in candy striped shirts attacking the goal on the right. Penman on the edge of the box, this could be dangerous for Dundee. Gilzine moving across, Penman goes for the line, turns it across, oh, what a chance for Robertson! Saved on the line twice. Stewart heads it back in. Well, that evens out the miss at the other end. Gregg. Nice flick to Henderson. Trainer outside right. Henderson cuts one way, then the other. flicks the ball through to McLean, a good pass. McLean turns it low across goal, a great chance and a wonderful save by Slater from that flick by Brand. McLean gets it to his left foot, turns it across to Baxter, a great chance here for Baxter to score. Stopped by Slater. Again Slater miraculously falls on it. No wonder Brand applauds the gallantry of this man Slater, who several times has prevented Dundee from going a goal down. Seath, a long one downfield, centre forward Cameron. Cameron for Dundee, goes in at the far post, over it comes, here comes Gozin, over the bar. Lovely move, good header, goal kick to Rangers. Henderson, a good one, riding well up, a great chance for Wilson. A fantastic save by Slater, that's the only word for it. Absolutely fantastic, point blank range, Wilson absolutely let himself go there, and Slater right on the line beat the ball down. Henderson, over it comes, Miller heads it in, it's a goal! Miller has scored for Rangers. The Dundee defence flat-footed, the ball headed in very simply, and it's one of the most unexpected and dramatic goals we've ever seen. Great rolls of it, used Dundee at the other end, what a chance here. The young boys runs it in, it's a goal! Cameron scores for Dundee! What a game, what a final, what a match! 2 goals in 45 seconds, one for Dundee, one for Rangers. What a match, one each! About 90 seconds to go, the free kick to Rangers. Henderson at outside left, collects it from Baxter. Henderson inside the box, chips it to the far post. Miller's there, and the ball's in the net. Miller scores in the last minute for Rangers. Inside the last minute now. Dundee have done it once, can they do it a second time? Cousin shoves it forward, comes through to Gregg. Henderson, Brand. Henderson again, through to Brand. Wilson coming through, the extra forward. Left foot shot, a great save by Slater. Brand must score. 3-1, 2 goals in the last 60 seconds. Fantastic scenes of jubilation among the Rangers players and on the terracings. Rangers strike twice in 60 seconds, and it's all over.
Gilzean was famed for his heading ability, but his days at Dens were to be numbered, and soon he was on his way to Spurs in another big money deal. Meanwhile, another promising youngster had made his breakthrough.
Out to Robertson. Low one, and there's Scott with a great goal. A great goal there by 16-year-old inside right John Scott.
When I first arrived, it was different to what I'd experienced down in London. It was a case of everybody trained together. So I'd arrived here, I was training with the likes of Bert Slater, Alec Hamilton, Bobby Cox, Bobby Seath, Bobby Wishart, Alan Gilzean, Hugh Robertson, Andy Penman. You know, most of the team that had won the championship in 1961. So it was a great experience.
Stewart to Waddle, a high one. Penman's caught it, turned it back nicely. A mix up there, and Scott's on the spot to score a third goal. A tragic blunder there in the Dundee United defence, involving, I think, left half Briggs and of course goalkeeper Davey. At any rate, the ball fell at the feet of 16-year-old inside right John Scott, and he had merely to prod the ball home with 6 minutes left for play to put Dundee, I think, into an unassailable 3-1 lead in this exciting Tayside derby.
I was fortunate. I played in the first team 2 weeks after I arrived here. You know, and just a raw young boy. But the players I've mentioned all helped. They, if you made a mistake, they told you. They told you what to do rather than what not to do. If you did something well, they praised you. And generally they talked you through a game. And I mean, they were great players themselves, so it was easy.
Penman, very fast one, past Gordon. A quick cross, there's Waddle, and a great goal! A beautiful header there from Bobby Waddle, from that cross by Andy Penman.
The great team of the early 1960s was fast breaking up, and early in 1965, Bob Shankley followed Gilzean out of Dens, his departure signalling the end of a golden era for Dundee. Bobby Ansell was to replace him, and by 1967 his rebuilt side had progressed to the semi-final of the Scottish League Cup.
St Johnstone have a lead of 1-0 at the beginning of this second half, a goal coolly scored by Whitelaw, who kept his head very well after a terrible tangle between the Dundee goalkeeper, who was really blameless, and the two Stewarts, centre half and left half. The goal came just when Dundee looked rather the more likely side to score. Chance here, it's kicked in. 1-each, Dundee have lost very little time. Jos McLean with Wilson.
The score finished 3-1. In the final, the Dark Blues met European Cup winners Celtic, but lost 5-3 in a thrilling encounter at Hampden.
The manager at that time decided to take 13 players in the squad, and unfortunately it was unlucky for me. So I was sitting in the stand watching the game, but thoroughly enjoyed it. Celtic were a good side, got off to a good start, but we played very well and gave them a hard time of it. And as you say, it was we lost 5-3, but you know, from a neutral point of view, it was a good game to watch.
And headed away on the line, McLean. Jim McLean scoring a second goal for Dundee, making the score Celtic 3, Dundee 2, Lennox. Celtic 4, Dundee 2. Chance for Jos McLean. So for the third time in this remarkable match, Dundee trying a fight back. Celtic 4, Dundee 3. Wallace. Celtic 5, Dundee 3. What a day this has been at Hampden.
Despite losing, Dundee showed their quality by going on to reach a second semi-final, this time in the Fairs Cup, only to lose 2-1 in aggregate to a powerful Leeds side over the two legs. Previously, however, the Dark Blues had produced some great performances, particularly in the second round against Belgian outfit Royal Liège.
Chance, that's number one, yes. Goal number one. Stewart. Goal! Oh, good goal. 1-0. Alex Stewart. Goal! Wilson. Sammy Wilson stoops to head the ball. Slight deflection past the keeper. 3 minutes of the second half gone. Dundee go into a 2-1 lead. Chance for Stewart. Downwind. Goal deflection. Another deflection. 3-1.
After their Fairs Cup experience, manager Bobby Ansell was replaced by John Prentice, and with Jim McLean as coach, great progress was made. Promising youngsters like Jim Steele and Ian Phillip made a big impact, but it was the arrival of striker Gordon Wallace in 1969 that sparked a turnaround for Dundee.
John Prentice signed me, and it worked out well for me because he was definitely a thinking man's player, and I like to think that I was that kind of player as well. So it certainly helped my career.
After a 3-year absence, Dundee were back in Europe in the UEFA Cup. After defeating AB Copenhagen in the first round, they were to meet old rivals Cologne.
I thought in the night we played very well until a spell late in the game where everything just went right for us.
The atmosphere at the end was just electric when we came off the park, and it was a wonderful feeling, you know, to have beaten them, because they had something like 3 World Cup stars playing.
Overath, after the game, when I congratulated him on his performance, all he could say to me and shake his head was, "How did we get beat?" To which I replied, "Because we scored more goals than you."
And then we drew AC Milan in the next round, and to play in the San Siro, it's like everything else, it's childhood ambition, isn't it? Schoolboy stuff.
The Milan game, unfortunately was a terrible result across in Milan. We lost 3-0. But the game here, we tore them apart.
Coming back here for the second leg against Milan at Dens, I thought Dundee probably gave one of the best performances, in my time at the club anyway, against anybody. We won the game 2-0, and though we went out, I thought it was a magnificent performance that we gave that night.
By then, Prentice was becoming increasingly disillusioned with football. In December, he resigned, and Jim McLean was passed over for the manager's job before accepting the post of Dundee United boss.
It wasn't a nice time for the club at that time, because we felt we had something going, the players, we felt something was going here and something big that we could build on. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be.
After Prentice and McLean's departure, Davy White took over as manager. And despite the loss of key men like Jim Steele, Ian Phillip and Doug Houston, progress was maintained over the next couple of seasons through the finishing strengths of strikers such as Gordon Wallace, Jockey Scott and also John Duncan, who scored 40 league and cup goals in 1972-73. For the whole of that season, Dundee were unbeaten at Dens.
Not clear, down to Houston, and what a goal! Tremendous shot from Doug Houston. He nearly uprooted the net.
With Tommy Gemmell obtained on a free transfer from Notts Forest, Dundee progressed to the 1973-74 League Cup final. In the semi-final, Gemmell had netted the only goal against Kilmarnock, and now the ex-Celt would captain the Dark Blues against his old club in the final.
What I can remember of the day, actually going to the game, it was a terrible day. It was during the power cut crisis. The game was kicking off at 1:30, so the whole organisation was all really disrupted. And we went through to Glasgow and we were delayed on the way through because I think the roads were closed, some of the roads were closed and waterlogged and what have you. So we were late in getting to the hotel. We hurried a meal, pre-match meal, went to Hampden, were told when we arrived at Hampden that the game could be off, and eventually they decided that the game would go ahead. I think it was quite late, it must have been maybe 1:45 or something when they decided it would go ahead. And I think that worked in our favour. I think that took away the nerves from maybe the Dundee team. Other than Tommy Gemmell, most of us, it was probably our first cup final. And I thought we played reasonably well on the day, considering the conditions.
Wilson punching it forward, brought down and taken on the turn, and it's a goal! Gordon Wallace has scored for Dundee as a result of that free kick. The ball punched forward beautifully by Bobby Wilson, controlled nicely by Wallace. He turned and hit it right-footed inside Hunter's left-hand post into the back of the net.
I'm football daft, always have been, and it's a schoolboy dream. You dream of when you're a kid that you'll go to Hampden and score the winning goal in the cup final, and to achieve it, honestly, it's fantastic. You know, I mean, it's great that they can't take it away from me. You know, it's one of these memories that's etched.
And there he is, Tommy Gemmell with the Scottish League Cup. Dundee's first victory since 1952 when he beat Kilmarnock. What a moment for Tommy Gemmell and manager Davy White.
During this period, former free transfer men goalkeeper Thompson Allen and midfielder Bobby Robinson were both capped for Scotland. But in October 1974, the prolific John Duncan was transferred to Tottenham for £140,000. When Dundee again fell to Celtic in the Scottish Cup semi-final in 1975, Davy White's vow to rebuild the team saw the shock departure of Scotland striker Jockey Scott to Aberdeen early in the 75-76 campaign.
He fell out with 3 or 4 of us, and one by one we departed the scene. So my turn came in 75, and I went back to my hometown team, and ended up a good move because I got to another League Cup final and won that one as well.
That season marked the start of the new 10-team Premier League, but although there were some excellent performances, Dundee were relegated on goal difference after finishing level on points with Dundee United and Aberdeen. For the past 6 seasons, the Dark Blues had regularly been in the top 5. But while their North East rivals were set to flourish, Dens Park would host First Division football for the next 3 years. In 1977, Dundee met Arbroath in the Scottish Cup quarter-final.
Strachan scoring, the referee saying he was onside. Arbroath seemed to hesitate. 4 minutes to play. Strachan. Both teams at this stage desperate not to make a mistake which could mean death and exit from the cup, and there it is. That's the very mistake that they didn't want to see. The ball headed into goal there for Dundee by number 14, Eric Sinclair. Ian Pardee beating Fulham, resisting a tackle by Fletcher, lifting it across goal, and again, the identical move. Sinclair has scored again.
In the semi-final, Dundee again lost to Celtic. That was the 5th time in 8 years that Dundee had reached the last 4. But failure to secure promotion prompted Davy White's resignation. Tommy Gemmell took over as manager, and soon Gordon Strachan was on his way to Aberdeen in exchange for Jim Shearer and £50,000. Strachan, however, went on to full international level, and it was soon clear just how good a bargain the Dons had got. However, Gemmell's management style, the prolific goal-scoring of Billy Pirrie, the return of Jockey Scott, and signings like Eric Shadler and Bobby Glennie brought some bumper home attendances.
I was with Aberdeen, first started in 1974, signed professional there. I was there for 4 years, and then there was a chance come for me to come back to Dundee. And I sort of jumped at the chance, back, local lad, playing for the team I supported as a laddie. Dream come true.
Dundee narrowly failed to gain promotion that year. But in 1978-79, an Ian Redford double in a 2-2 Dens draw with Ayr United ensured they returned to the Premier League as champions.
The final game, if my memory serves me right, I think it was midweek. Everybody was all hyped up with a big crowd that night. Everybody was expecting us to go up. And in the end, we got the point. They took us up and we had a good night that night.
Dundee's 3-year nightmare appeared over, but they were never far from the relegation zone. In April, a sensational result against Celtic brought a ray of hope, but relegation was merely postponed, the loss of 73 league goals a major factor in their demise.
Fleming, what's a goal? It's a goal, Fleming has scored, it's 3-1. Ferguson, the shot, it's a goal! Sinclair makes it 4-1. Sinclair coming through, rounding Latchford. Chips it out in front, it's in the net, it's a goal, it's 5-1, absolutely unbelievable.
We came back down, I think one of the main reasons was we had the same team as we came up, and he bought 2 or 3 players that he thought would keep us in the Premier League, but that never worked out. Certain guys just didn't have it.
A new manager was given the task of restoring Dundee's fortunes.
Well, a new manager come in, Donald Mackay, and he tried new things, different approach to games, which we thought was working, but for the first 7 games, we never got a point. And we thought, oh no, here we'll go again. But after the 8th game or so, we started picking up. And we had a right good run in the season. We got to the League Cup final, and we got promotion. He signed players like Cammy Fraser, who was playing with Hearts at the time, and he was a good player. He settled things in, done well.
This goal from Fraser against Ayr helped the Dark Blues reach the final of the Bells League Cup. In the final, Dundee would meet local rivals Dundee United in a 24,700 all-ticket game at Dens Park, the venue being decided on a toss of a coin, following the Scottish League's decision to play the match in Dundee. Glennie would captain Dundee, who after a 17-game unbeaten run were hopeful of success despite their First Division status.
The final that day, I think a lot of the players thought it should have been played at Hampden itself, but that's another story. But we played here, and everybody was hyped up. The day itself, and all the supporters, both Dundee and Dundee United, were here, and we were in the First Division at the time, and it was the first time ever that the both clubs had been in a national final. It seemed to go that quick. You played 90 minutes, but it just flew in. It was like 9 minutes. And obviously the result didn't go for Saturday.
In the final reckoning, Dundee had lacked the quality to trouble United. However, promotion was the main priority, and a good late run left Dundee requiring 2 wins from their last 2 games to guarantee promotion.
Sinclair's putting pressure on him. Oh, it's given away by Oliver. A chance for Dundee. There's number 2. Ray Stevens.
We had 2 or 3 days off after the cup final, and Donald took us back in, and he sort of get us back up to the league. The league was more important after that, and everybody worked hard that week, and I think we got the results after that, which proved we should have been up in the Premier League in the first place.
It's long and deep. Glennie getting it down. It's Eric Sinclair. 52 minutes. Eric Sinclair has put Dundee.
Dundee remained in the Premier League in 81-82, and they achieved this with some spectacular goals.
Now for Cammy Fraser. Oh, that's a splendid goal from Dundee. Just beyond Fraser. Ian Ferguson gives Dundee the lead.
Ferguson to take this. 2-1. High up and under again, and this must be a great chance for Mac. He's done it.
Next season, the team made an equally encouraging start with a 3-3 draw against Aberdeen.
There's Ferguson, and that's a marvellous equaliser by Ian Ferguson.
Dundee's youth policy had uncovered top prospects like strikers Ian Ferguson and Ray Stephen, goalkeeper Bobby Geddes and fullback Stuart McKimmie. Up front, the youthful Ferguson and Stephen had a splendid tutor in the battle-hardened Eric Sinclair, who himself continued to get his share of opportunist goals.
Sinclair waiting in the middle. There's Sinclair! 2-0 to Dundee.
Dundee skipper Cammy Fraser provided the midfield drive and also the ability to apply the finishing touch.
Mikey found its way to Fraser. Superb goal. Clinically finished by Cammy Fraser. Just his second goal of the season, but one to savour. Good play from Mikey. Very determined indeed. Chance for the cross, the near post ball. Cammy Fraser makes it 3-2.
Donald Mackay had done well, first gaining promotion before stabilising Dundee in the Premier League. That term, the club had finished 6th, their best league placing in 8 years.
Glennie. A picture goal from Bobby Glennie.
But in December 1983, Mackay resigned after poor home form had convinced the Dens board he could take the club no further. Mackay's replacement was Aberdeen assistant manager Archie Knox. But after narrowly avoiding relegation, his hopes of rebuilding the side around Cammy Fraser and Ian Ferguson were dashed when they joined Rangers on freedom of contract. However, the £350,000 received from the Light Blues enabled Knox to make 8 new signings, the pick of whom were centre-half and captain John McCormack, a future Dundee manager, and the midfield trio of Stuart Rafferty, Robert Connor and John Brown.
Rafferty! The perfect strike! And Dundee are in front.
Archie, when he came here, the first thing he did was he signed, I think, about 6 or 7 players from the first division, and they all turned out to be good buys. And we had a good team, and I was fortunate that I carried on after Archie, and with the same players, and we did well.
Archie was a very volatile character, I have to say that. I think if you speak to any player, he was a great motivator, very shrewd and tactically aware. But you know, I think at that time Dundee needed a really strong character. They'd been in the doldrums for quite a number of years, and they needed someone with real strength and determination to really grab them by the shirt collar and haul them up. And he started doing that. And a lot of the players they signed, people like myself and John Brown, and players like that, I think were aggressive type of players. And they also had people like Bobby Glennie. So we had a little bit of steel about our team, and Archie needed that.
Here's Rafferty now in the break for Dundee. Ray Stephen is up through the middle. Oh, it's a good change of pace from Rafferty. Here's Brown. And at the second attempt, John Brown makes it. And Dundee have snatched the lead.
There was great enthusiasm at the start of the 84-85 campaign. And despite a poor start, the Dark Blues finally struck gold in early September beating Dundee United 4-3.
Oh, that's a great goal. McWilliams, 1-0. 9 minutes gone. McKinley, there's a great goal. Oh, yes. 2-1. That's a bang hit, it's in. Harris, 3-2. There's Brown with a header. Oh, 4-3.
The key to Dundee's revival had been sparked in midfield, where the speedy Rafferty complemented Connor's craft, and the tackling and surging runs of Brown made him a constant threat. Brown went on to make his mark in the Scottish Cup, and he continued his scoring form in the league. That summer, the team was further strengthened by the arrival of Morton sweeper Jim Duffy for £57,500, and his influence was soon in evidence.
I was persuaded to go to Dens Park in 1985, really by Archie Knox. I met him in a hotel in Glasgow. He impressed me a lot. He had a great enthusiasm for the game. And I said, although I'd spoken to his previously, they were still trying to thrash out a transfer deal with Morton. And Archie got in the back door a little bit, I think, spoke to Hal Stewart, concluded the transfer fee. And I was delighted to move up to Dundee. I thought it'd be a good career move, and it turned out that way.
Although Archie Knox had made a tremendous impact at Dens, in June 1986 he resigned due to continuing financial constraints, and assistant manager Jockey Scott took charge.
Jockey just kept it going, really. He just wanted to follow in Archie's footsteps after he left, and Jockey has a great knowledge of the game. Everybody respected him, and he played his part.
Spiralling debts were at the root of Dundee's and Jockey Scott's problems, and soon a recently capped Robert Connor and last season's top scorer Ray Stephen were transferred. But two astute Jockey Scott signings were to turn things around. Keith Wright of Raith Rovers and Dundee United's Tommy Coyne were signed for around a quarter of the sum raised from the sale of Connor and Stephen. And soon they formed a highly successful striking partnership.
Rafferty still gets a chance and they put it away. Finished there by Coyne. John Brown. Oh, that's another one. This time it's Keith Wright.
This helped the club to the Scottish Cup semi-finals.
The 3-2 game at Tynecastle was probably, I think, the most disappointing game for me as captain of the club, because we were playing very well at the time. It's probably one of the few games at that particular era where I think we maybe went into the game slight favourites because we were playing so well. And I think we were 2-1 up, I think, at half-time. But I think we had never been in that situation for quite a while. A lot of the players came from first division clubs and maybe lacked a little bit of experience at that particular stage of the competition. And at half-time, I think maybe a lot of us were thinking about the final. And we get caught in that dilemma, which is, do we sit on the lead and protect it, or do we go and try and push on? But I think we played very, very well over the whole 90 minutes, but we made crucial errors at the wrong time and were punished. And eventually, as I said, we get caught, I think, with just that indecision of maybe just trying to hold on to what we had, whereas in the first half we dominated the game. So we might have been better just going for it. But you learn through experience, and as I said, people from that team, they went on and done very well. As I said, we mentioned John Brown getting several championships with Rangers, Tommy Coyne, Keith Wright, and boys like that went on again and done very well. So I think that we all learned from it, but it was a very painful lesson.
Dundee had been unfortunate to lose, but they made a great start to the 87-88 season before Jim Duffy's career seemed ended by a cruciate ligament injury against Rangers. Without their influential skipper, the Dark Blues struggled before the arrival of the experienced Gordon Chisholm sparked a recovery.
14 matches. United delighted to see him today, that's a goal. Coyne does it again. Now, this is what caused Dundee United ballers in that first half. Wright has done very, very well. There's a lovely cutback. Surely he must put it away. He has. Coyne. Angus, that's a very good looking ball. Rafferty might get his shot, and he does, and it's a post. There's a chance, it's in. Right, 3-1.
January 1988 was to herald a major slump in Dundee's fortunes, with high-scoring midfielder John Brown's £350,000 transfer to Rangers. Their only consolation being a Tennant Six's success.
Trying to play it beyond Duncan, and Tommy Coyne succeeds. It's Dundee's third, and now it looks as though the Tennant Sixes will go to Tayside.
By then, Ian Gellatley's controlling interest had been bought by Angus Cook, and when Jockey Scott was allowed to move on to Aberdeen, Dave Smith was handed the manager's job at the start of the 1988-89 season.
I think Dave went wrong because he came up from English football and he was here on match days when you seen him. He was maybe here a couple of days during the week, but that's the only time you seen him. He never got involved as much as I thought he should have been with the players. Hence the reason I don't think he got the respect that he should have. And then I think hence the reason that we didn't do that well under Dave.
Despite the unrest, there was a notable double over reigning champions Celtic.
Al Saunders. Keith Wright. Deceiving Lex Bailey. Great run here by Wright and Coyne. Oh, yes.
The previous season, 33-goal Tommy Coyne had finished 5th in the race for the Adidas Golden Boot, a trophy awarded to Europe's top league marksman.
Tommy Coyne scores his 56th goal of the season to make it 2-2.
Smith's was to prove an ill-judged appointment. The colourful Dundonian had spent his entire football career south of the border, and players and fans alike were unhappy with his unattractive long ball tactics. By January 1989, a succession of poor results left morale at rock bottom, and it was little surprise when he resigned after just 7 months in charge, to be replaced by 1973 League Cup final hero Gordon Wallace.
Well, when I was offered the Dundee manager's job, I honestly knew it was a big challenge. Coming from across the road, I knew what was coming into. But I thought Dundee had potential. They had Keith Wright and Tommy Coyne, and obviously they had a couple of good strikers, but unknown to me, the Tommy Coyne deal had all been done and dusted, and he was away at Celtic within me being here about 3 weeks. So it kind of upset the apple cart slightly.
As well as Coyne, other players such as Tosh McKinlay, Connor, Stephen and Brown had departed. Their replacements were not of the same standard, and in 1990 the Dark Blues were relegated.
The next season, really we lacked a leader in the middle of defence or in the middle of the park, somebody that could get a grip. And it was only when Jim Duffy came back at the end that we put any consistency in the season. And had we had a player of Jim Duffy's calibre or somebody similar, we could have done a lot better. But it was always disappointing to get relegated.
A series of encouraging results brought fresh hope, but despite a late Derby win, the Dens Park revival had come too late.
And it's eight. Look at this. Oh, dear, dear. Here's a great chance. That's equaliser. Yes. Right. Well, all credit to him for scoring that, but really, that was Hurricane assisted.
Billy Dodds made a big impression alongside Keith Wright, but Dundee narrowly failed to secure promotion in 1991, although there was the consolation of an exciting B&Q Centenary Cup final win over Ayr United. Dundee's failure to gain promotion and strong opposition to controversial proposals by Angus Cook to amalgamate with city rivals United meant a nervous start to the 91-92 season. Soon, Canadian entrepreneur Ron Dixon was at the helm, and despite various off-park financial uncertainties and management changes, the Dark Blues managed to achieve promotion to the Premier League with a 3-1 win over Forfar.
Ritchie, Gallagher now in the clear. This could tie it up for Dundee. It's brilliantly finished by Gallagher. There's no doubt now about the outcome. It really was top-class finishing by Gallagher, and the pressure once again is off.
"7,000 home fans were happy to acclaim Dundee as First Division champions in the final game against Montrose, although the game had ended in an embarrassing defeat. Simon Stainrod, by now interim manager, was to be confirmed as team boss. And a major overhaul meant there were several new faces by the start of the 92-93 Premier League campaign. In August, great encouragement was taken from a famous victory over Rangers.
It's home. It's a great opening for Dundee. Then Beeman scores. Flicks with the corner, and Maxwell's punch out still leaves a problem on. And Gilzine has scored for Dundee. Denny playing it in, looking for Gilzine. Helps it on there for Dodds. Absolutely magnificent. 3 goals apiece. It's Dodds against Maxwell. 4-3 to Dundee. Well, what an incredible match this is.
Despite the fresh faces, the Dark Blues were never far from the dreaded relegation zone. In the last third of the season, the right blend was found. Premier safety being secured with a 3-1 win over Hibs at Dens.
It was a tremendous atmosphere about the club. And, everyone pulled together, from the cleaning staff to the office staff to the directors, the players, all got on very, very well. All worked really hard for each other. And you know, I think it was a great place to work. It was a great atmosphere. We could attract players to the club because of the atmosphere, because they would, through word of mouth, they would talk to other players, and players would say, "This is a great place to work." So I don't think there was any negativity about the club. It was just a simple fact that we didn't have a lot of money to buy players. But certainly that didn't stop, I think, the quality. I think when we had Neil McCann on one side, Paul Tosh on the other, Martin Vakers in midfield, George Shaw and Jerry Britton up front, scoring goals, we were an entertaining side.
By early 1994, it was clear the club was bound for the First Division. And Ron Dixon, having already spent £1.5 million on players, made it clear he would be making no further investment.
Circumstances dictated that we needed 4 or 5 players at that time, and as I mentioned earlier on, we had no finance, no overdraft, so we had to raise the money. From Billy Dodge's sale, we had 4 players brought in, plus we still had some money left over for other things to help him run the club, and that, as I said, what we had to do. There was no point in having Billy, who was a top class player on his own and didn't have enough good players around him to help him, so we had to supplement that by selling Billy and bringing other players in.
On a more positive note, 19-year-old Neil McCann had emerged as an old-fashioned winger of electrifying pace, with the ability to beat defenders and deliver telling crosses into the goalmouth. Back in the First Division, it was hoped that Dundee would make a quick return to the Premier League. But although always likely to score themselves, they were just as likely to lose them at the other end, as here against Dunfermline. Along with the Pars, League Cup winners Raith Rovers were their main promotion rivals. But Dundee were too often unable to win the games that mattered, and in the end, they narrowly missed out on promotion and a playoff place. By November '95, Dundee had progressed to the final stages of the Coca-Cola League Cup and lay just off the top of the league.
The next season we had a fabulous cup run, which ultimately took us to the Coca-Cola Cup final against Aberdeen, and we beat Kilmarnock. We then went into the quarter-finals and played Hearts at Dens Park, and that was an unbelievable game. I think we were 2-0 up. I think we went to 2-2, 3-2 up, we went to 3-3, 4-3 up, and we went to 4-4, and eventually went to penalties.
That shootout was as dramatic as the rest of the night. At 4-4 in spot kicks, Willie Jimison hit the post, and that left Vikhorst with this to put Dundee into the semi-finals. Mission accomplished, but breathtaking entertainment all the way, with Hearts making a major contribution. And Dundee's fans clearly in the mood for celebration.
The semi-final was, for me personally, was the most important occasion in the whole time I was at Dundee Football Club, because leading up to the game, we were in deep trouble. The directors had came to me during the week, which was not the ideal preparation to a cup semi-final, and basically told us that we had to win. We had to win because we had to get to the final. I think the directors were all expecting Rangers to win, as everyone would do. And there would be a sellout crowd and the TV money would keep the club alive. So they told us really we had to win.
Dundee take the lead, it's Paul Tosh. Breaking the ball, falls for Shaw. This is McCann, a chance on here for Dundee. Delicate chip, he scored! It's a brilliant goal! Neil McCann for Dundee. A flash of genius from the Dundee youngster. And it looks like earning his team a cup final place. This will be everyone forward. The ball will be launched by Sanderson. There's no time. Dundee in the final.
And I remember getting after the celebrations to the dressing room area, and Malcolm Mead, who was the vice chairman at that time, met me in the corridor. And Malcolm was very emotional, and because he realised how much it meant to the club. And the rest of the directors were also in the dressing room celebrating. And I had absolutely no emotion whatsoever. I was totally drained. I was happy, very, very happy. But it just was such a relief. I just wanted to go somewhere quietly. And it wasn't until the next day then we realised we were in the cup final.
Nearly 17,000 Dundee fans, many from distant parts of the globe, made the trip for Dundee's first major final since 1980. And with only 2 defeats from their last 21 games, players and fans alike were confident of success.
The game before the cup final, we played Dundee United at Tannadice. We're 3-0 up, playing some fabulous football. Eventually won the game 3-2, which at that particular game was very flattering to Dundee United. I think they scored 2 goals in the last 15 minutes or so, but we played some great football for an hour. And went into the game probably slight favourites against Aberdeen, because Aberdeen weren't doing too well. But I don't know whether we got caught in the excitement of the game, or whether we just weren't good enough on the day. But we struggled, there's no doubt about that, and we let everyone down.
Good running by Glass, great ball in! Dodds for Aberdeen! Oh, great sleight of foot there. Buckenshearer, 2-0 to Aberdeen.
Following the cup final defeat, in the league a demoralised Dundee could only finish 5th, and full-time football would only continue after a drastic cost-cutting exercise, which saw several top players, including Neil McCann, sold. The club looked ill-equipped for a promotion challenge in season 1996-97.
The chairman had come back for the cup final and had insisted that we sell Morton Vekhorst. So again, we went back on the phone again, a little bit under duress, but we had to do it. That was part and parcel of the job. Tommy Burns at Celtic at that time decided he would buy Morton, I think, for about £350,000, and also included the deal we would take Barry Smith up to Dundee. So that was frustrating, and we slipped out of the promotion running in that season. I just think it was one player too many that was sold at that particular time.
The mercurial Chick Charnley had already shown his ability, but he was also prone to moments of madness, which was to result in him being sent off 4 times while at Dens. By now, Darius Adamczyk was back at Dens, and with Rayside forming a solid central defensive partnership alongside ex-Celt Barry Smith, a revitalised Dundee again reached the semi-final of the Coca-Cola Cup. That was only Dundee's 3rd defeat in 17 games, but it was to signal the end of a spell of good form. By the end of the year, Jim Duffy, who had worked wonders on a shoestring, accepted an offer to become manager of Hibs.
On a professional level, I think it was the right thing for me to do. I think they were a big club in the Premier League, a lot of ambition, and I think people would have looked at my ambition if I wouldn't have taken the job. I was offered it, I didn't apply for it. But when I look back now, in hindsight, it didn't work out for me at Hibs. So perhaps if we could have worked things out and maybe had 1 or 2 investors into Dundee, it would have been great to stay there.
Assistant boss John McCormack took over as manager. But although Scotland under-21 winger Ian Anderson continued to show his flair with a series of stunning goals, Dundee narrowly failed to secure the playoff spot. And with player after player being sold, Demoralised fans could only wonder where it would all end. Clearly, there was no future under Canadian Ron Dixon, and that June the controlling interest in the club changed hands.
I think we'd been interested for possibly about a year in taking over the club before we took over in '97. We had been exploring the possibility. I'd met the previous incumbent here at Dens Park, Mr. Dixon, over in Seattle, and had a chat with him and tried to organise some sort of deal. And eventually, '97, we took the club over and have taken the club from then to where we are at the moment.
The new regime had brought fresh enthusiasm, and in the prelude to the 1997-98 campaign, McCormack was given the financial backing to sign several players, including Livingston goalkeeper Robert Douglas.
Jim Leishman phoned me to say that Dundee had put a bid in, and obviously had bought a lot of players at the time. To be honest, I was really enjoying it at Livingston, although I was part-time. I wasn't sure if I wanted to move because I was enjoying it so much, and then we spoke. John McCormack was at a game that night. I went in to see Jim Leishman, and he said, look, you're going to Sleeping Giants. So at that point they'd signed about 9 players, and I think I was the 10th, and they were looking to be challenging for the First Division title, which they did.
The Dark Blues got off to a great start against fellow promotion hopefuls Falkirk, and soon they were setting a cracking pace at the top of the league. However, by February 1998, poor home form had convinced the board that managerial change was necessary. John McCormack was replaced by old Dens favourite Jockey Scott. Under his direction, Dundee had 3 straight league wins before meeting Rangers in the quarter-final of the Scottish Cup. Dundee continued to set the pace at the top of the First Division, a run of 8 successive wins, leaving them needing just 1 point from the match against Raith Rovers in April to win the championship. After 4 long years in the wilderness, Dundee were back in the top flight. There were great celebrations when the First Division Championship trophy was presented the following week at Dens, following their 1-1 draw with Ayr United. After a poor start to their Premier League campaign, which began with 3 defeats and not a goal scored, a revamped Dundee bounced back with a 2-0 triumph at Tynecastle.
Madison towards the back post, Richie clears Adamczyk with another try, it's a goal! Game over, Dundee 2-0 up!
That proved the catalyst for a number of fine results. And in November, the Dark Blues made the short trip down the street to defeat local rivals Dundee United, courtesy of a sensational goal by James Grady.
It's dropped now for Grady! Oh! What a glorious goal from James Grady! Last season's top scorer who fired Dundee into the Scottish Premier League has finally broken the Derby deadlock.
Then came a prolonged slump, and by mid-March Dundee lay just 3 points off the bottom of the league. Meanwhile, talk of a merger with Dundee United had prompted emotional protests from Dundee fans, before the board admitted their inability to raise their 1.2 million share of the funding for the 2 new stands to bring Dens Park up to the required 10,000 all-seated capacity.
Last season we were under a lot of pressure with trying to get funding to build the stands, and not winning so many games as we'd hoped early on it put everybody at the club under pressure. But when things did turn around and we did get the good run in, I give the whole place a lift, and I made the job a wee bit easier for the funding for the stands.
5-1.
Really proud of it and delighted when you seen the stands from start to finish and being finished in a record time, and we were being told by the SPL even if you start the stands you might not finish them, so you might not be in the league next year anyway. But we're always totally convinced that once we had started the project, we would be ready on time.
At the end of April, the board finally announced their intention to go it alone, and soon the bulldozers had reduced both ends of the ground to rubble. It had been one of the most traumatic spells in Dundee's 106-year history, but Jockey Scott and his players had remained focused on footballing matters.
Dundee have taken the lead. 24 minutes into the second half. So simple in the end. Boyack. The counter-attack is on. No offside flag. Here's Grady. 1 against 1. Grady can finish it. And he does! James Grady has scored to make it 2-0 to Dundee.
In an end-of-season flourish, relegation fears were cast aside as the Dark Blues went on to finish 5th, their highest ever Premier placing and one that left them above Dundee United for the first time in 25 years. But as the foundations of the new stands almost miraculously began to appear, it was farewell to fans' favourites Darius Adamchuk, Ian Anderson and Brian Irvin. The latter's determination almost symbolising Dundee's victory over adversity, as the trio exercised their right to move on under the Bosman ruling. It was now a race against time, with 10 weeks to complete the stands. But work was completed 10 days before the July the 31st deadline. Fittingly, the fans voted the new stands to be named after Dens legends Bob Shankley and Bobby Cox. Dundee were to find it harder going at the start of the new season. Home form was poor, but away performances were a different story. And in December they hit the high spots with a stunning 2-1 victory over Rangers at Ibrox.
Nice ball inside. It's in. Dundee have scored. An amazing winner that will be.
Nevertheless, results were frustratingly inconsistent. But one highlight was a stunning strike by midfielder Hugh Robertson against Celtic.
That's not all. That's a magnificent goal by Hugh Robertson. Listen to them applauding that.
Great encouragement could be taken from the progress of young central defender Lee Wilkie and midfielders Gavin Ray and Stephen Boyack, who have now all been capped at under-21 level. Any lingering prospects of relegation were then dispelled with a fine continental-flavoured finish to the season.
That's a decent-looking ball and it's a goal. Luna. A superb ball played inside to him.
I'd like to think that we've done well in the Premier and we're able to look forward now, whereas the past couple of years it's all been about survival. We'd like to think that we've got a stable enough team that we can maybe look for higher up in the league, maybe even places in Europe. But at the start of each season, the tightness of the league, it is all about survival. But next season coming up, we want to be in the top 6 after the first 3 rounds of games, because that's where the big games are going to be. You want to be playing against Celtic and Rangers, so hopefully next season we'll be able to do that.
Back at Dens, as the first season of the new millennium drew to a close, Dundee fans were to be rewarded with a stirring victory over their city rivals Dundee United. Goals from Faulkner and Grady were to send the Dens fans away in exuberant mood after a memorable day in the sun. Following this successful encounter, that great club servant Jockey Scott and his assistant Jimmy Bone were to part company from Dens Park, and a new management team take over the running of the Dark Blues. But the Dundee faithful will always follow the fortunes of their team in triumph and adversity, in the knowledge that their club has a proud past and a unique place in Scottish football history.
It was a club of stature, and in my opinion, it has the great potential still to be in the city of Dundee, a club of stature.
I've thoroughly enjoyed my time as a player, a coach and a manager here. Team spirit has always been good here since I've been here. It's always been a laugh and a joke, but when it goes into the park, everyone fights for each other, which is one of the main aspects of their team.